Councilwoman, would you do the blessing?
Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day that you have blessed us with. We ask you, Lord, just to guide and direct the decisions that we make here. And we just ask you to help us do what is best for the people. In Jesus' name, we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Chet Hoskin Jr.
Here.
Bill England.
Here.
Jack Bateman. Joe Bird. Julia Coates. Jody Fishinghawk. Here. Meredith Fraley. Janelle Fulbright. Don Gardner. Frankie Hargis.
Present.
Hannah Gloria Jordan. Lee Kinner. Dick White.
Here.
Curtis Snell. David Gordon.
Present.
David Walkenstick. Eric Allen Watts.
Honey.
That's 10 present.
Speakers present. Let's, just to refresh my memory, show of hands, who has already joined this committee? Let's just resolve any uncertainties about it, and I assume everybody, just to make it formal, wants to join today, because this is our first meeting since the meeting that we had that was perhaps without.
Because there was only 4 or 5 of us there.
Okay, so everyone present is a member. Certainly other folks that show up on the council can join. All right. We don't have minutes from last time. Councilman Lay, you're one of the sponsors of the discussion, but you have a guest here today that wants to take a few minutes of our time to illustrate one of the issues with Taro. Is that
Yes, yes, sir, that's correct. If I may introduce, if Shelley could pass out that paperwork that she's prepared for us, I'd like to introduce.
Point of information, why do we not have meeting minutes? Because we had a meeting, so,
They're approved in executive finance.
approving it? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Approving it.
sorry, just wanted clarification. Thank you for letting me.
If I could introduce Mike Riley. He's a Cherokee citizen. He would like to come and visit with us today about Taro. Mike, if you could come up to this podium if you want to. And Shelley will pass out some paperwork that I've kind of done some preliminary notes for Mike that we can work from.
Mr. Riley, appreciate you being here today. Your name is Mike Riley?
Yes, sir.
You're a Taro contractor?
No, I was working for a Taro.
Working for a Taro contractor. And we appreciate you being here today. I wonder, sir, if you can tell us what you have to say in the span of maybe about 5 minutes. And we'll certainly have some more discussions.
I was working at the C&B offices in Tulsa, and I fell off a scaffold, shattered my left leg, broke 5 bones in my right foot. I was working for Cooper Construction and Design, and at the time, they didn't have workers' comp insurance. He's a Taro certified contractor. He denies any compensation. I had to get a lawyer, and right now, I'm flat broke. And I was just wondering how he could be a contractor with no proof of workers' comp insurance, or how he could be doing business like this. And, you know, basically just, I'm looking for some help.
I think that we ought to take some of the issues you've raised and offline discuss with you more one-on-one, but it does raise an issue in my mind as to whether Taro currently requires, independent of any other law, a requirement to carry workers' compensation insurance. And I see John Overacker shaking his head. And I appreciate, maybe, sir, that's something we can address in the context of reforming this law that we're discussing. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Thank you. Yes, Councilman.
Mr. Chair, so would this not be under the contracts that are signed? Do our entities not have that as requirements in construction contracts? Because I don't know that it would be under the Taro law, but it should be under the policies and procedures of procurement, shouldn't it?
And you may be right about that, Counselor. That's why I think maybe we should visit more with the gentleman offline. Councilman Lay, do you have anything you want to add to the gentleman's comments?
Well, the only thing that I can tell you that I met Mr. Riley some time ago, and I've been trying to attempt to help him with his healthcare issues. They've been extensive and expensive, and we believe we've gotten those paid through CIHS. And the thing that bothers me is apparently if we don't require this workman's comp, that's an issue. If we can't, if this young man called the Taro compliance office, he called the Cherokee Marshal Service, he called CMB and CME who owns the building, still nobody helped him, ever. In fact, they just quit answering his phone calls and didn't return his phone calls. That to me is a big issue, and if we can't take care of our people better than this, then we need to do a timeout and reconfigure these rules, and laws, and contracts, and what we're doing, and that would be my issue. Thank you.
Yes, I'm thinking along the same line, Mr. Lay. But there's one thing I'd like to intervene here, and that would be people like Mr. Riley. You run onto them every now and they don't have any resources to fight anything like this. And Cherokee Nation has 10, 12 lawyers over there. Why couldn't we bring and put one of those lawyers into the Taro? And if we run onto a problem, that we have somebody that can't come forward and go to court, have to represent themselves, which a layman like me representing himself in court, I'm not gonna get much done. But we need to supply some type of representation for these people, that not only him, but in other processes of the Cherokee Nation. And I think it's something we need to look into. I think we've got lawyers sitting right here. I think that they realize that our people aren't being represented to fight these companies. I don't think they're being represented to go in front of CMB. But anyway, I think we need to think about trying to get some kind of support for them and help them.
Counselors, yes, Madam Speaker.
Well, I see two things here, and I'm going to ask John one question. John, Mr. Overacker,
Yes, ma'am.
do you all require certificates when they take a job under Taro? Are you requiring certificates from their insurance company that they do have workers' comp, with it being specific to us so that we get the 10-day notice of termination should they fail to pay?
We don't exactly visit the Taro office. I think Mr. Crew, and how are we doing on the Cherokee Nation side? I know they have to supply a certificate of insurance.
Well,
I don't know how that part runs through.
I think what's happening, and this is pretty common in the construction world, they get the insurance at the start. When they get on Taro, you probably require them to have some.
No, we don't. It's
Okay,
not
well,
one
this is
requirement.
something we should do. We should require them to have insurance, and then as they get each job, you can require a certificate, and the companies are this is very common practice, that you ask for a certificate where we're named on the certificate, and then if they terminate for lack of payment, we'll get the 10-day notice. And I see Buell nodding his head. This is very common practice, isn't it, Buell?
Very common.
And we need to implement it here as quickly as possible. And the other thing that we need to consider under Taro, we could put this in our Taro law. This is an easy fix. And the second thing we need to do is the debarment procedure. If you fail to keep your insurance up, debarment should be automatic. Because that's a known quantity when you bid a job, that you better bid in enough to keep your insurances going during that job. So I see those two things that we can fix with this committee is one, require the certificates, And then they can be job specific as I understand, or it can be time specific. But we can be a named entity on that certificate so that if they are one of these companies, and we have a lot of them out there unfortunately, that have it at the beginning, but then they let it lapse during the time that they're doing the job, we'll get the notice, I think it's a 10-day termination notice.
It's 10 days and they'll send it to whoever's name's on this.
That's right. And that makes, and then we immediately turn around and say, company, get right, or we stop the job. Because we can't have them out there without workers' comp. That's a requirement. I mean, that's just not something that we can even think about. I mean, we can help them maybe with bonding, but workers' comp is, they gotta have. So it should be automatic that if they fail to carry this insurance, we're gonna debar them. And we need to put some teeth in this law that basically when they screw up like this, yeah, well, I'm gonna make the motion that we add that into the Taro law. First, that we have a debarment procedure, and second, that we will always require a certificate on the workers' comp. And we be named as an entity so that we'll get notice if that termination occurs during the life of that job.
Councilwoman, we need probably the legislation before us. I wonder if you would consider it as we come back for future revisions on this, if we could include that in there. I mean, we could try to do it now on the fly.
I would certainly defer to the committee chair on that, but let's put that in our list of things that must be done, because this young man, I know exactly where he's coming from. He's now having to sue the company, but the good thing, I don't know where the young man's at, the good thing is you're not limited anymore. When a company doesn't carry workers' comp, sky's the limit on what you can try to recover. And I think Todd was probably gonna say that.
That's exactly what was one of the things I was gonna say. I don't have any cards on me right now, but I'll give you my contact information. We will make sure that
I
that
was gonna say,
language
I don't have a card either.
well, I'm not soliciting business. But I will make sure that we get the appropriate language into the Taro draft, because it's the working committee right now, subcommittee. But no, your type of situation should never happen. Unfortunately, it does. And we will make sure, if you contact me and give me all the particulars, whatever we can do, we will do to help you. Okay?
And before somebody puts anything on Facebook, Todd and I were kidding about the cards.
No, I wasn't. I want him to contact me about about his information.
Councilwoman Countwatts?
Thank you. I have a couple of things. So first of all, I really feel like it needs to be a standalone act, separate, because if we do it under the Taro law, it insinuates only if you're a Taro vendor. So for the privilege of paying $45 and have somebody invade your personal and business taxes, suddenly we put things on them that we don't put on everyone who contracts with the Cherokee Nation. So it needs to be part of a broader deal. It shouldn't just apply to Taro, and I think that it deserves its own standalone act because it's so complicated, the way I understand it, and I don't have anything to do with, I don't do workers' comp stuff, so I don't have the knowledge that several of you have. So I'm not sure that we shouldn't consider it as a completely separate issue. And then, and maybe you guys would have more feedback in that, but that's the way I look at it. The other thing is, if this was not on trust land, then I don't understand why the Oklahoma State workers' comp folks would not help address this issue, that entity didn't have workers' comp and should have. Right? I mean, I don't think that's our trust property. It's not in trust, right?
And that's part of the details I would like to get from
Okay, very good.
the
Thank you,
gentleman.
Mr. Chair, for your time.
And to make sure, that all avenues that are available to you can be expanded. And then as to, you know, whether it should be an individual act or part of this, again, we're you know, in this subgroup, we're listing out ideas. Now, at the end of the day, eventually, this committee may choose to put it in Taro and have a standalone act, or just have a standalone act. But it is important that in one way or the other, that the Cherokee Nation ensures that the workers that are doing contracts with the Cherokee people's money are protected. And we will make sure that that happens either in this act or another.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman.
I'm glad you brought that forward to us, Dick, and matter of fact, I look forward to seeing a piece of legislation. To be honest, I think it needs to go in Taro also. But I got a question for Todd. Why is this company still doing work for us and receiving contracts? Can you talk to me?
I do not, you know as much as I do about this situation. You know, that's why I want to talk with the individual, get the names and the addresses of the principals, investigate it and find out, because this is a situation that I've seen in my private practice in the past, and it is heartbreaking, because there are individuals that you know, a working man can't go out there and hire an attorney, and they have an expectation that because of the Oklahoma Workers' Compensation Act and the Cherokee Nation Workers' Compensation Act, that they are protected, because they're, you know, and Ms. Jordan is right, is that, you know, they don't have to prove negligence. It's an automatic deal, but if you don't have workers' comp, well, the doors are kind of open, you know, but still, yeah, it shouldn't get to that point. The state of Oklahoma and the Cherokee Nation, you know, have Workers' Compensation Act, and we should require every contractor, subcontractor, to make sure that is covered. And it may be in both, it may be in Taro and may be in a standalone, but it needs to be addressed, no doubt.
And in a draft that we might use today for just discussion purposes, I've got some language on debarment. I don't know that I have language in there about workers' compensation. I think Councilwoman Watts raises a good point, that do we want to set too high a bar for our Taro contractors? I think we should have strong debarment language in our Taro law. That is, if we have lawbreakers that are Taro certified, they need to lose that certification, in my opinion. But I also think that the contracts we enter into with other vendors who aren't Taro ought to be held contractually to the same standard, and we may need a statute that says, C&B, you will include this language in your contracts, and you won't do business with lawbreakers. And if they are lawbreakers, then they're going to have to not get Cherokee business, at least for some period of time, until they've cured the taint of their unlawfulness. So, before we get, Councilman Stan.
You know, as a rule, a general contractor, he is the one that's got to make sure that sub has workers' comp. All right, you?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Usually the general contractor is going to carry the liability insurance. He's going to require from every subcontractor he uses to give him a certificate of insurance to cover, because if he doesn't, then he's going to end up paying the insurance bill in the end. And they audit your job, and so it's all based on the amount of the job. So he's always out to get that insurance certificate from every sub. Like when Curtis and I used to work together all the time, we always got our certificate of insurance from all our subcontractors. So. And I think nobody should be laxed on that at all. I mean, or you'll end up in a situation like this.
We have a number of guests here today that have come here from the administration and from C&B, and I wondered, Diane Kelly, would you come forward and kind of help us introduce folks, and so we can know where they come from?
Yes, Mr. Chair, when we were working on this, we thought it would be helpful to invite the different entities that have different roles that interface with the Taro law and the Act from time to time, from C&B and also from the government. And we invited them here for the work group meeting. So that way, as you start working through the law, if there's pertinent information that you need maybe some clarification on from the standpoint of whether or not it's in our policies or whether it's part of the procurement acquisition, they are here and they can respond to that.
Could you help us identify who these folks are and their...
What if we have them just to start at the very back of the room and stand up and introduce themselves? Start over here with you, Mr. Blackwood. We'll start with you. He's not part of the group, but we've got Mr. Blackwood and his wife back here.
Thank you.
Mr. Duke?
C&B Purchasing.
Jason Carlin with C&E Purchasing.
Shelley McLean, Cherokee Nation Purchasing.
Rebecca Mitchell, Cherokee Nation Purchasing.
Bob Thomas, C&B Employee Services.
Vivian Phillips, Employee Services, CMB.
Deanna Edgman, Commerce Department.
John Overacre.
Jerry Cruz, C&B Contracts.
Tammy Beaver, Taro.
Willard Mounts, Taro.
Anna Knight, Commerce. Oh, sorry, Todd. I figured they knew.
They knew me, okay.
And they know me and Todd. That's it.
We had, Diane, if you would, stick around.
Okay.
Your office drafted some possible amendments to the Taro law. I think you were kind enough to incorporate some of the suggestions I had, and counselors, that has been passed out. That is not in your book, but that has been passed out in hard copy. I wonder if Councilwoman Fishing.
I was wanting to know if it'd be proper, just since this is what we've been drafted and they have been working on, if we could move for its approval just for discussion's sake, so we can be getting working on the product.
And Councilwoman, you don't contemplate there's going to be any votes today. We're just talking about a vehicle for discussion. Right?
Yes, I know, this is not set in stone, it's just for discussion, so we can.
So we have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Need a second. We're in discussion.
I just wanted to clarify so that everybody was clear. We started working with the new Attorney General the second week he was in his office, and we've been working with him, I guess the last, about every week, we've been trying to meet with him. So just for the record, the Attorney General has been working with John and I on this, so I just wanted you to know that.
I also have Diane Barker Harold, who is the council's new attorney, and I don't think I've ever taken the occasion to introduce her at a committee meeting. So, Diane, stand up and make yourself known.
Good morning, everyone.
Diane Kelly, do you have somebody you want to designate to maybe start walking us through?
Yes, the Attorney General will.
You drew the short straw, Mr.
Well, I've had some experience at this podium.
You're right. That's right.
If it is the pleasure of the committee, what I would recommend is to go through the act, the proposed act, section by section. There are areas that are, will indicate changes, and there are, and whether there are changes indicated or not, this is, the whole thing's up for, for perusal. So I would recommend that we just go section by section and go about the task of doing this.
Mr. Attorney General, direct our attention to the first section that there is an amendment.
The first section to which there is a proposed amendment would be in the section 4, a definition for debarment list.
This would be in section 3.
D, isn't it?
Oh, section 4F, okay.
Pardon me? I got something wrong here.
Ford Cruise D, it's D. Ford Cruise.
It's not, yeah, it's not highlighted. Okay, well, I need something that's highlighted,
You have something.
because I won't be able to.
Okay. This is what we worked with the other day.
Okay.
Mr. Attorney General, is what you're going to be looking at, though, identical to what was passed out? Because that includes some additional amendments that were inserted yesterday. And Mr. Mounts, do you know whether he's looking at the same thing that all generated with my suggestions?
Okay, I will go by what is handed out, so we are all on the
Okay.
same page. Yeah. Thank you.
You're at section 4D, correct, Todd?
That is correct. The first amendment will be section 4D, an amendment to the definition of core crew. Core crew shall mean an owner of the firm or, new language, an employee who is in a supervisory or other key position such that the employer would face serious financial damage or loss if that position were filled by a person who had not previously worked for the contractor or subcontractor. Now, the purpose for a core crew is that you want a firm or a contractor to be able to do the job, and therefore there are certain individuals, supervisors, et cetera, that have worked with the company for quite some time. They know the procedures and that they are essential to the job function. So therefore you want to exclude them. But you want to limit that as much as possible so that the common worker or the even skilled labor that is available that is Native American can be brought in. So the core crew definition is one that is to be someone who is essential, supervisory, but to limit it in as much as possible.
I wonder if I could ask a question, Mr. Overacker. Mr. Overacker, if this language were in place today, would it make much of a difference in terms of these new jobs that are starting and they bring in a crew of folks they've had and they may be non-Indian? Would this be a difference maker?
It's a major issue, a major deal breaker for us, because under the old law, actually, if an employee was there for more than 1 year, we could not touch them or replace them, even if they were a laborer or someone who was replaceable by one of our citizens. We've dropped the 1 year, and we've also dropped the regular permanent employee to squeeze it down. So at any time, on any job site, as long as they're not in a supervisory role, the owners of the company, they can actually be replaced by Cherokee or other Native Americans who are qualified to actually fill those positions.
And Councilor Count Watts?
Did you have your hand raised too, Buell, because you were before me, if it was?
Oh, my apologies.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Well.
I'm excited, yeah. But go ahead.
And I have a problem with the employee deal because I agree with John, because you're gonna have a contractor come in here and he's gonna have 50 non-native people working, and that's gonna be his core crew, so ours is gonna get pushed out. And they won't have that opportunity because we're putting it in here that they are core crew people. And I totally agree that that's opening it up.
Are you saying that the insertion of this word employee will be a difference maker?
Yes, it'll be a deal breaker for our Taro vendors.
When you say deal breaker, do you mean that they will be unable to comply?
No, they'll be able to circumvent the system and bring in
They're presently able to circumvent the system because this language is not in here now, Counselor. Is that right?
Is this language in or is it?
Let me read the.
This is new language, I believe. I don't believe this is in there.
This is new language.
We've always been able to protect ourselves with that not being in there. Now putting it in there.
Would you yield to the attorney?
Yes, I'll yield to Todd.
Let me read the current definition of core crew, okay, so we can all be on the same page. Core crew shall be a member of a contractor or subcontractor's crew who is a regular permanent employee, so that language is in there right now, that is or has been on the employer's or subcontractor's payroll for a period of 1 year continuously or is an owner of the firm. Okay, so it's going to be an employer that is 1 year continuously. Now, now what we would have is we would take out the 1 year. It says core crew shall mean an owner of the firm or an employee who is in supervisory or other key position. Now, the term employee it needs to be who is a supervisor. And they are striking, what they are striking is the words permanent employee or for a period of 1 year continuously or as an owner of the firm. So they it still is an employee, okay? But it would be one who currently, if you're an employee, no matter if you're a bricklayer, if you've worked for them for a year continuously, you're automatically a core crew person, okay? So that is a huge loophole to get these people in, okay? Now, under the new definition, that is out, all right? So that wouldn't matter. So what it is the core crew shall mean an owner, so we got to have the owner in there. It could be a 49% owner that is, African American, Caucasian, Mexican of the firm, or an employee who is, specifically the employee who is a supervisory or other key position such that the employer would face serious financial damage. So they're going to have to justify this core crew employee that he's a supervisor, he or she is a supervisor, or someone who is integral to the completion of the to the job. The main difference in the amendment is taking out that 1-year continuous employment loophole. So it does make the Taro law stronger if we just if we add or delete the language that is in the current law. That's my opinion.
Correct. It's only it's going to hold for the superintendents, the supervisors, the lead persons, and things like that. But when we change the law, we'll be able to replace actually plumbers, electricians, 5-year construction workers with our citizens who have the same experience as them. So it shortens the core crew list immensely.
And counselors, it appears that what was passed out, I was mistaken. I thought this had all of the original act language in it with the amendments.
No,
that's not the case.
No, we went.
So what we need to direct our attention to, and I do apologize, and I know Counselor Cowanwatch, you're on deck here, but is it in the packet?
Yes.
It's
Okay.
right behind you, agenda. Current Taro law.
Well, but in the folder that Taro provided to us, there is the current act that has amendments. And I just need some clarification. Is that what you wanted to be reading from Mr. Attorney General? Because I want you to be reading from something that shows the old language and the new proposed language.
Yes, what we need is, and obviously this is not going to be the last time that we discuss this, but we do need a strike-through version with the new language, new language underlined. But what we can do is compare the amendments to the original language that is in your packet.
Very good, very good. All right, Councilor Cowan-Watts, you are.
Okay, the core crew deal is a critical, because I look at Taro law as not just the means for the contracting part and whether or not somebody gets preference as an Indian-owned company, but it's also the overall general economy and employment for our citizens and other federally recognized tribal citizens. So this actually came up on the implementation of the existing law with the implementation of the Taro policy. You know, I won't name names, but there was a company that had issue about how it was being implemented on the core crew list. So we actually have an opportunity, and I don't know what the actual language or how to implement this, but what it's dawned on me during our discussion, first of all, whether they're Taro or not, when they sign up with us to do business, it's really easy under the Taro process. That is when they should designate, like under your policies in the form. At that time, they should tell you who their core crew is.
Correct.
And then after that, then it shouldn't matter if a contract changes. What they should do though is in their monthly reports to Taro, they need to notify if there's a difference in a change in their core crew. Because the way I've always interpreted under the existing law core crew, there's two things that create a core crew member. The one that's really obvious to me is if you need a PhD PE engineer or somebody else that's technically trained around doing a job, that's easy to document and show that they are a core crew member, whether they were hired day one or 10 years later. If that's specialized to that project, that's easy to demonstrate, or the particular work that you do. But the one thing about the timing deal, that I thought the year was in place, that if you had competent local people working for you, that it would be difficult and time consuming and resource consuming and money consuming to retrain just to replace them. That would be a core crew member in a different sense, and that would be the only two things that define a core crew member that shouldn't be, the way I describe it to Taro vendors today, if they ask, is like, why do I have to comply with this? I was like, well, you can't bring on non-Indian people to do something as simple as dig or sweep if it doesn't require technical skills, or it's a job bank deal with the lumber. You know, you've got sheetrocking, some of those things that are trained skills, but they're easily found. you would want to go to the job bank and seek people to put on, I guess unless, I mean, do we count those then? I mean, we don't care if it's 5 or 10 years if all they do is, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Those are the kind of discussions we should have. So, but also, again, I don't want to penalize where we're missing an opportunity to create jobs in our economy, is it shouldn't just be limited to our Taro certified businesses. The core crew issue needs to be taken up with all these people we see getting contracts, because that's another opportunity for them to hire locally. And if we're not making that apply in some form or fashion to non-Taro, then we're missing a lot of employment opportunities.
Counselor, would
So-
you agree that if we imposed a revised core crew requirement in the Taro law, but then also passed a statute that said C&B and any other contracts that are non-Taro, you'll still make this requirement? Should we go about it that way? Is that your suggestion? Another statute, or should we? I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but under our jurisdiction, we have the right, and I believe that the existing Taro law kind of already says that. But
We
we're
actually
not
don't-
enforcing it.
We don't discriminate from a Taro vendor to a non-Taro vendor. Once they sign a contract, their core crew list is the same as whether they're Taro certified or they're a non-Indian owned company. We expect the same from them.
How do we have, see, I don't understand can we implement Taro on some of the what I call fuzzy contracts, because it's not like you go put a brick in and you can see the brick, like a construction. What about all the marketing contracts and all these other things that go out? Are we doing a core crew list for them too? Because we have people with degrees that are trying to find jobs in northeastern Oklahoma and can't, and I don't see us on the professional services side pushing Taro out. So
Right now, we're just doing it for people who actually perform work on our property and we have contracts with. That is what we started with. I think Becky Johnson, maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, she actually sent the definition that every contract is under Taro. We have to pick and choose, because some of the consulting contracts we wouldn't know. We don't know, we can't, the Taro cannot monitor every contract that the Cherokee Nation and the entities do right now. I think on the average, you guys do 19,000 invoices, and Rebecca, we do about the same? Yeah. Contracts about the same, or we purchase products or contracts. Yeah, so we're talking 30,000 plus contracts that go out, or purchases. Of those, maybe 30%, 20%, or over $5,000 that actually fall under the Taro side, which we do, you have to bid out and everything else, and I'm just guessing here. So we'd have to actually go into detail and find that out. To monitor every contract that we do, we actually start with the instruction. We actually do people that come on site and perform work, whether they're hooking up, they're building something, they're doing the networking, they're adding different things to the casinos and to our properties as well. So right now, we just focus on the people that show up and perform work where we're at. And I understand your point, it should apply to everyone. We would need to sit down, if that is the intention of the tribal council, we would need to figure out and sit down with Jerry and the purchasing, acquisitions management here, to figure out how we are actually going to do that and encompass everything that goes on in that sense.
Anything else, Councilwoman? Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Fishing Hawk?
Well, I was gonna comment, I remember when we went over Taro a couple of years ago, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, did we not divide it up into contracting?
I believe
Very-
that the
we had
final
separate-
draft had two different, two acts that addressed those two subjects.
We kept them apart, they addressed them both, and then there were the two that failed. But we might wanna dust them off and look at them again, and I would really like Diane Kelly, please come up and talk to us about procurement on the C&B side. How you all address it, what do you all do about contracts going out? Do you all know every contract that goes out? Every contract that you all put out on the procurement side is C&B noted in there. I would also like to know if HR is following Taro to a T.
Okay, when it comes to these specialized contracts, we don't monitor those contracts. And the reason that we don't monitor those contracts is because we were never giving a directive by the administration previously to do that. And what happened was, when the new administration went in, I think there was some questions about whether or not Taro was applicable or applied to some specialized contracts. And we were contacted, we checked the contracts out. There are provisions in contracting that if you deviate from the policy, there is a form, which is called sole source, and the director, executive director on the government side, as well as C&E, I think it'd probably be the vice presidents, they have to fill out that form and specify why they are going outside the box to contract with a contractor who is not Taro or who is non-Indian. And in some cases, they are either what they're asking for, what they're getting, they can't get through a Taro vendor, or they don't have an Indian who does this kind of work. That's the whole purpose of a sole source and why you would actually justify it. I think from our perspective, we've never actually dove into those unless there was a specialized case that was out there that we looked into, and we worked with C&E or we worked on the government side of it, but we never were told to look at those. But there is a lot of money that goes out through that process that really does need to be spot checked. And I'm like John, we don't have the manpower or the time to do that because there's a lot of stuff that goes through there. But from, spot checking, we could do that, but not monitoring it every day, because on the construction sites, they're out there on a regular basis because those things change. The players change.
Would you yield to me for a moment?
Yes, I will.
Is it fair to say that on these sole source contracts that there's no real scrutiny outside of the group leader or whoever the person that's checking the box? Is there no second set of eyes looking at this to say, we agree, there's no Native American that can fill this role, or there's no Taro vendor that can fill
I could truthfully say on the government side, because I work very closely with Becky's shop and Shelley, I know for a fact that they are really good about the sole source process and making sure that that documentation is in place. Now, where you're going to, on the government side, I don't know exactly how health contracts, they have their own division that's sitting out here that has to tie in with Becky's shop. You've got the roads department, you've got, who else is it? There's another entity. Who is it, John? Planning and Development? Planning and Development. I don't know, there's different groups out here that have their own people that are working with the contracts that kind of tie in with Becky's shop. And Becky could probably address that better than I, but they have their own area that works on those, that do the pass-through. And I'm not really sure how closely that is looked at, but I know that if you were doing Davis-Bacon wages on a contract, and it was a Department of Labor contract, and you know that you're going to get monitored or audited. John and I had a discussion this morning with one of the directors that we have to be told that we need to monitor that because we do the Davis-Bacon through Taro. Well, Becky's shop is good at letting us know that on the government side. But if Planning and Development doesn't work through Becky's shop on it, then we don't know about it. Or if somebody over here doesn't work through that shop, because that's the centralized place for all of the contracts to go through. On C&E side, I don't know, because I know Jerry Crew and his shop have some authority with the contracts, and I know that over there with Dan and Jason, they have the pass-through where that filters into there, and I think they would have to respond to that, but we don't look at those.
I yield back to you, Councilwoman.
I would like all three to respond, Jerry, Dan, and Jason.
Okay. The Councilwoman would like those folks to speak to this issue. Are they?
I've just heard there's a substantial amount of money going out.
Yeah, I'll
There's no
speak
way
to
to
that
monitor them. I hear Taro does not have the manpower to monitor them, and if y'all's not doing your job, I feel like maybe you all need those money to Taro so they can monitor you.
On the procurement and contracting side, how it typically works, or how it does work in the policy, is anything above $5,000 is required to be bid out. Okay. If it's not bid out, then we have the sole source document that was just discussed. So anything above $5,000 is being bid out. When it's bid out, a Taro preference is applied to the vendors who bid on that. So that is applying both to professional services and to construction services. Anything that goes through that bid process, there is a Taro preference.
Could you
And
tell me
I'll-
the Taro preference you're talking about?
The way we implement the Taro preference is if a non-Taro vendor is the initial low bidder on it, and there are Taro vendors who bid, then there's a 24-hour rebid opportunity for those Taro vendors to come back in and offer a lower bid. At that point, we make the decision if the Taro vendor is qualified and has the lower bid, then the contract will go to them. If they don't have the lower bid, then it becomes a judgment call. How much higher are they than the next lowest bid? So in general, that's the way the process works on the C&E and C&B side. Now, the way we're divided up, contracts and procurement isn't in the same shop. The only reason I mention that is so there won't be confusion on what I'm talking about or what Dan may be talking about. The procurement opportunity comes through C&E. They assign the award to it. It comes to us in the contracting shop. We issue the contract. If it's a PO, then that's just generated out of our purchasing department. Typically, the POs are for commodity type items, materials, that type of thing. So,
How often would you say you've seen sole source go through your,
I would say over a 1 year period, there may be 20.
20 sole sources?
Mhm.
Can you find me a dollar amount?
I would just be guessing at this point on the dollar amount.
Under a million on all 20?
Pardon?
Under a million on all 20 combined?
Probably, or at about $1 million would be my guess on that.
So there's probably less than $1 million that you've seen sole source through across your desk at CNB?
Yes,
Less than, okay.
on an annual basis. Now, I'd have to go back and look at each one of those sole source and the values, but that would be my off-the-cuff estimate on that.
Okay.
So,
Councilwoman, did you have questions for any of the other?
Yeah, Dan, Duke, and Jason, same thing, talk to the same subject.
Any other questions on the contracting side of things?
No, if there's less than 20, I'm sure it wouldn't take you no time to pull them. Could you please pull them and let me know?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
we'll do that.
I think what Jared just described is pretty much outlines the process. The only other thing I might add is, as far as the review goes, I think that question was raised as to who looks this over. We are requiring an executive leadership team member to sign off on the sole source. So it basically goes through the requesting department, the ELT member signs, whether it's Mark Fulton, Gary Waddell, whatever. And then we also sign it through our chain of command within the procurement. So it's not just one person making a decision to sole source. There is a review of it internally to make sure that it is for the right reasons. So
who's the highest person on the chain that signs off on that?
it could be, like I say, it'd be Mark Fulton. It could be
How
Mark.
many of them are they?
Pardon me?
Better yet, how many of you?
There are probably about 7 people that would actually be the highest. So.
On your procurement side, kind of along the same lines, how many times have you seen procurement pick up the phone and sole source something in a year's time, and can you roughly give me a dollar?
I would say, Counselor, it'd probably be, over the course of a year, maybe 60 that we run into on sole source. Typically, they're going to be for emergencies where we don't have time to bid it out, and that's what really generates most of our sole source. There may be some with specialized services where there's a particular group that has an expertise that nobody else has.
It's about typically 60 contracts?
Yeah, I would say roughly. I can get you an exact number if you'd like. I'll get back
How
to you.
about dollar figure roughly?
That, yes, I can do the same thing there. I can provide
Under a
numbers.
million?
Pardon?
Under a million?
I think, under $1 million?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. Jason, do you have any feel for a dollar amount total for the year?
Dollar amount for all of our non-competes? or
Yes.
sole sources?
Under a million?
No,
A year?
it'd be over that.
Yeah.
5 million?
Some of the contracts and things have been, have been large.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be over.
Yeah. Why don't you let us get you the exact numbers there, okay? Give you a feel for what we're talking about from scope, okay?
That would be great, because I'm
Okay.
wanting people to understand how much money's been going out the door over the years through sole source.
Sure.
They're not the competitive,
Right.
and I know we've just brought you a down.
Yeah.
and I've met with you several times, but I would like to know about that.
Yeah, that's good. I think we need to know what the real numbers are instead of speculating, so we'll get that for you, okay?
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very
You
much.
bet. Any other questions?
Concerning the report.
We have a couple of people ahead of you on the list. We have Mr. Lay and Mr. Keener.
Just a request about the report.
Sure.
Can it show the type of business so that we can see easily if there's Taro vendors that are in it or if it's an opportunity for Taro
Sure.
business? Thank you.
Councilman Fishing Hawk, is that all that you have? Thank you. Councilman Lay?
Ms. Kelly,
Yeah.
I think that you and Councilor Fishing Hawk have fleshed out a lot of my questions, but one of the things that frustrates me and has since I got here is with this act and law, we don't seem to have a lot of controls. This government doesn't have enough controls over our business units. It seems like to me, ever since I got here, the old axiom of the tail's wagging the dog. And I'd like to know at what point, the government should control this. The government should have accounting procedures to see what's going on. All these questions, we ought to know this stuff. We're not getting it on the business side. I talk about the tribe side and the business side when I go out to my community group. I shouldn't have to do that. We should be in total and absolute control of everything these guys, and know what they're doing over there. Not control, but know what they're doing over there. I don't think we've got that. As far as your group, you say you don't have the manpower, and believe me, I understand, because I'm hearing all these contracts that are coming through over here.
Dick,
When we have this law, and we're gonna get one, and we direct the business side to operate under that law, just like we do, well, how will we know that they're doing it?
okay. If I could just back up for just 1 minute.
Yes.
You have to remember that when the law was enacted back in the 80s, it was enacted off of a blueprint from a reservation. And we didn't actually enact fees. We were actually doing it at that time for construction purposes, because at that time we were getting ready to go into the construction arena. As we moved into it, we started working with the contracts or the procurement office here at the government. We were not actually in the casino businesses at that time, and we were in infant stages with them whenever they were the bingo outpost. It's just been in the last 12, 15 years that we actually moved over onto the tribal business side.
It exploded, yeah.
Yes, and it exploded very fast. In fact, they were already building when we actually got involved on the back end of it. And it's been a learning curve for the business side. And I think, from my perspective, the door was open, but you have to have people who are coming in, like your Gary Waddells, the Mark Fultons, and some of these names that have been mentioned. As the players change, we're not doing a very good job on our end of going up and orientating them, but you also have to have that from the top down. And I think the council played a very big role in making sure that that door was open, and the chief had to carry that out. Well, I think that that has actually been better in the last several years, and I see where there's more dialogue. In fact, we have been at the table up at C&E with different entities, and in fact, Sean Slayton made the comment and said, you're kind of like that song about you guys are everywhere. Well, we're interacting with Bob Thomas and his group. We're interacting with Kevin Ogle and his group on the construction. We're also interacting with the contracts, procurement, purchasing, and we have meetings regularly scheduled with Dan Duke and Jason and them on a regular basis. We're meeting with Sean and Kevin and them on the construction. John is up there every week, but several years back, we weren't doing that. We weren't even at the table. We weren't working with them in that. And I think that with the support of the administration and with the support of the council, I think that you're going to see a lot more of the dialogue, communication, coordination, collaboration, working back and forth from the government with Taro and with the business side. And I can see a big change with the tribal businesses that are, you know, here was the gaming side. Well, you've also got those other businesses that were sitting out there with Phil Reedy and Stephen Bilby, Mike Bailey, Stephen Bilby, Phil Reedy, Chris Moody, CNI, all of them. We're all sitting down and we're collaborating on these potential businesses, expansions, and we are actually at the table helping to do some of the recruitment. And Marguerite McKinney and Andy McMillan are another one that have been actually working with us. So I think that you're going to see a lot more of that dialogue. I would say maybe a year from now you can come back and evaluate and assess and see whether or not you feel like that we've done a better job. But I think that it's going to happen with your support.
Anything else, Mr. Lay? All right, Councilor Keener?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, you may have hit on something there that I was, my ears perked up, and you said sole source and maybe doing some spot checking. I don't know if that's the answer to quality control, I'll say, but do you think that might be something, a place to start in checking?
It's a place to start, because I know we've had some discussions with the contracts that, you know, like Health was doing, and that you'd actually look and see what your sample is for that quarter, and then you could pull so many of them and say that they were spot checked. And then you've also got your management team that's in place, like he was talking about your 7 vice presidents. You could also do a quality assurance check from the executive director's level down to those 7 to see how many of them they're running through there, to see how many they're checking. And he could actually do that on his end as well, because we do that internally within our own areas, or anyway I did.
Thank you, Diane. And this may be for the C&B people, but what I've seen is if, and what I'm seeing, if a sole source comes in who's non-Cherokee, non-Taro, then they get in, and then they hire their friends. That's what I've seen. But after they're in, they're just in, right? And then they can hire whomever they think necessary. I don't know who would want to respond to that.
Well, I'll take a shot at it.
Okay.
Typically on the contract side, if there's a sole source, there's a limited term to the engagement of the contract. And you know what the scope is, so it's not going to be typically a situation where you get your foot in the door and then you expand that scope and it goes on forever. Be it a consultant, be it, you know, whatever, a marketing firm, they're going to have a scope for what they're going to do, and that's going to be I don't know if that gets to your question or not.
Well, I'm thinking of one case in particular where someone was contracted as a consultant for $12,000 a month. And then after X amount of time, they felt like they needed another person to help them. So they got another person, and their salary bumped up to $18,000 a month as a consultant with 2 people. And
within that initial contract.
well, I'm not sure if it was an additional contract or the same one, but that person's contract did go up $6,000. Or I mean, their salary went up it's at $18,000 a month.
Well, what we might need to look at in that situation, I'd be glad to look into the specifics of this, but you can have a situation where you have an amendment to the scope of work, typically would be an amendment to the contract. Right now, we're not doing an additional sole source on that, right? So perhaps any modification to that initial sole source contract, perhaps one answer would be to have either a supplemental sole source as an amendment to that prior sole source, so that we're aware of that. Just offering that as a suggestion. One other thing I might mention, this was set up, I don't know, a year or several months ago, when we were talking about payments to Taro vendors and some of the problems that we were having in quick payment and that sort of thing. CMB was asked to and agreed to set up kind of a Taro liaison, if you will, with the vendors, where there'd be one point of contact if there's a problem with getting payment. As it turned out, that was me who got that job, and I know I worked with Councilor Fishing Hall on some questions related to that. But the reason I mention that is if there are specific problems that come up that you all are hearing regarding either Taro awards or preference or complaints that it didn't go to a Taro firm when it should have, pick up the phone, give me a call, I'll give you a business card afterwards, give Sean a call, we would be more than glad to look into that. Because we're trying to get the contracts, the POs, the business to the Taro companies. If someone is saying that something wasn't done right, then we need to look into that. We need to find out if in fact it wasn't done right, we need to fix it. If there's some additional information, then we need to find that out and get that back. So I'd offer that to each of you as part of the oversight and policing that we were talking about is if and when you hear the problem, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Anything further, Councilman Keener?
Yes, I have a few more questions.
Okay.
Jason?
Just wanted to answer an earlier asked question regarding the number of sole sources. We've had 48 for this year, and the total is $1,433,510.59. So we can file that report, provide that to you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, and I don't know who's going to send the report to Councilor Fishing Hawk, but I would ask that whoever does it, send it to all of us. Thank you. Let's see, I was also going to ask, and this is kind of shifting gears, and that is the general provisions. I know we're not to that yet, but I just, this is what Diane and her group have provided for us. It's been very helpful. I appreciate you giving it to us, but under the general provisions, it does have work permits. And where does that fit in with the what's under discussion right now on the core crew?
It will be the same. I think we make an amendment to the new Taro law that it will be a $25 per day for non-Indians on the site. That was recommended to us. We still may be in some positions if we're doing a lot of projects, we will not be able to put a citizen on a project. With the new housing projects going on, we may be doing some more casino work. We may only have, as an example, 40 Cherokees ready to go to work at the Hard Rock Casino, and there's 125 positions available because they're working at other places. So that is going to change that part. It will be $25 a day if the council approves it for every non-Indian on site. Okay. The non-Indians will still receive a work permit like that we do currently now. Okay. And also, even when I speak of the general provisions, there is a new law that's passed by the tribal council, we will have to adjust the general provisions to fit. The general provisions are our guideline, our policy to enforce the law. So that will be we'll tweak that a little bit as well.
Okay. I was wondering about that. Also, one more question, just here. Also, on the oversight, I haven't heard any mention of the CNB board here today, but my assumption was that it would be the employees at the casinos and the businesses, and then the board would be the oversight of them. Is that correct? And the council is the oversight of the board?
In the governance structure, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I mean, we have a board of directors that is appointed by the principal chief and confirmed by the tribal council, and they oversee the CEO, which oversees the employees, which direct the day-to-day operations of the corporation.
Thank you. I just wanted to make that clear as we move forward.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Councilor.
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Garvin?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I think this 4D is going to take all of our time. Todd started out real good, and we got bouncing around, and we're still on 4D, I think. And I'm going to make a motion we adjourn because this is going to take some time. We're still on 4D. It's going to take many hours to make progress.
I think you're right, Councilor. And before someone seconds your motion, let me suggest that we had some folks from procurement that came here today that probably won't be able to be with us each time, so we did get a little far afield to accommodate them. But I think otherwise I agree with you. My suggestion, counselors, is that at our next subcommittee meeting, which I'll announce, it's in your book, April 26th at 11 a.m., that we adhere to the act with some amendments so that we can get a little bit more structure, as Councilor Garvin suggested.
I know we're gonna have a long day, and if we get backed up on this meeting, we'll back all the others up. So
I don't disagree with that, Counselor. And we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.